You're welcome. All right. Let's hit a couple more principles and then we'll take a break and get some tea. All right. So after principle number 5, Chen Zhen Jue Zhou, come with me now. We have another principle. So we say, first of all, make sure that you know what you're doing. Don't get stuck. Clearly distinguish empty and full. Don't get your chi stuck up here in your throat, so let that drop down. And then while you're doing all this and you're ready to move and you're ready to do your Tai Chi, it says, be careful. Don't do this with your muscles. Don't force it. Here is where we get the whole softness of Tai Chi. Right? So as we do Tai Chi, even when Tai Chi speeds up, even when Tai Chi looks martial, as some people were talking about it on Monday, it's always done softly. This principle is called Yung Yi, Bu Yung Li. So Li, this word Li in Chinese means exertion. It often is a reference to physical strength, but there's, again, in the language itself, this Yung Li means to exert. So you could exert moral influence. You could exert your position of power, your job title, whatever. But that's exertion, Yung Li. But it says Bu Yung Li, Bu meaning the negative. Don't use it. No exertion is necessary. All right, so let's come here into parting the horse's mane. And finding yourself in this spot, we adopt something we call Tai Chi Qigong, which is just getting into position and simply waiting, meditating, breathing. Stand like a statue. But not doing nothing. What you're actually doing in this position is going inside and seeing, is there any at all, any tension at all, any exertion? How much muscle am I using to just make the shape? Right? Can I go softer? Right? Close your eyes, feeling your fingertips, the palm of the hand, and the back of the hand, and the wrist. And if I just stop there with that much and say, is there any thing that I could let go of in just that amount? And then through the forearm, up to the elbow. Is there any tension in there? Is there any muscle in there? Is there any forcing in there? Any strength that I'm trying to use? What can I let go of? What's the barest minimum that I need to use just to create the shape? On up through the biceps and the shoulder and the deltoid, under the armpit. What can I let go of? And go down the opposite way and go down into the thigh. Just standing up, you're not letting yourself collapse, but how much strength do you need just to stay in this simple lunge position? Is there anything you can let go of in the thigh, around the knee, in the low back? So go ahead and open your eyes. So just with those two places, we could do the whole body this way. And then I go into motion, emptying out the front foot and turning. And as I go into motion, oh, look how soft you are. Look at that, right? Back over here. All I'm doing is turning the palm over, but no exertion. Stepping out. softer, softer, softer. Empty out the front foot, softer as it floats across. Holding the ball, stepping out. Parting the horse's mane. And relax. How does that feel? How do your hands feel right now? Thick, yes. Chi'd up. So how do you then, so roll this back and say, what is the assumption about why we have to go through that process anyway? So why are we using strength in the first place? I remember when I first started doing Tai Chi, and I was working with a teacher who had come over to San Francisco from Shandong province in China. He didn't hardly speak any English, and I didn't speak any Chinese at that point in time. And I wanted to impress him so bad. I really wanted him to see, oh, this guy, this young white kid, he's not so bad. He'd be worth teaching. But every time I did he would just shake his head and say, yeah, Buyong Li. I didn't know what he said. I didn't know what he meant. Buyong Li. Finally, one of the other kids in class told me, he says, the teacher says you're overdoing it. Don't use so much strength. So we realize that we use strength as a compensation for what we don't know how to do. Right? I want to, do Tai Chi. I want to get into this position. I want to do all the things that the master does, but I don't know how to do it. So I'll compensate for it by using a lot of muscle, because that I can get my hands wrapped around. I can get my mind wrapped around that. But the Tai Chi principles say there is another more effective way. And it says use E, the intention. The intention. Right? What I want to do with parting the horse's mane, which we learn a little bit later in a more advanced class, is split the energy. I have one hand going this way, and I have one hand going this way. So I take somebody's body or their energy, and I make it go in two directions, and they can't keep up with that splitting. Right? That's my intention. I want to split them up and knock them off balance. So the investment that I want to make in my Tai Chi practice is to practice this intention, not the physical, exertion of it, but the intention. I'm going to take your energy and cut it in half, split it in two directions, right? Confuse your energy. Over and over and over again, just this intention. Not the strength of it, not the exertion, the intention. And after I've done about 10,000 of them, then when I go into motion, there's only softness, but the energy disperses very effectively. Does that make sense? So this is principle number 6. Yung Yi Buyong Li. Yeah, Sass. Hold on a second. Do you have a question? Nope. No. Then not Sass. So before we move on to some of the other principles here, let me just pause and see how you guys are. So here's one of the reasons why we had this as part 1 and part 2, and why we might even make a part 3, because of the Peking duck effect. Some of you remember the first webinar where we talked about the Peking duck effect. Basically, it's being stuffed so full of knowledge, like a Peking duck being force-fed until it explodes, and your head just can't keep anything more in there. So my teacher always says, before you get to that point, stop, and we can do some other fun things. In fact, you know what we should do? We should just get up and do like a song's worth of flow. What do you think? And if it pops into your head, some of the things we've been talking about, sinking the shoulders, you know, shifting the weight, being softer, softer, softer. Let it happen. If it doesn't occur to you, then just forget about it. Does that make sense? Let's do a little. Let's do something. And I'll put on one song. Let it all flow down. My teacher says, you know when you start doing the sinking the shoulders thing? While you're walking up to the spot. It's already sinking. So here when we talk about sinking the chi, it gathers in and then just drop the anchor into the water and let it go down, 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 down. Breathe in. Breathe out. Step on out. Let's bring the hands right into the heart. Step out into your corner. Softer, softer, softer. Bring it in and do the other side.
He was a terrific guy. Exactly the person you thought he was.
Bring it back on in. Step back in and hug the big tree. This hand on top, catch the moon and step on in.
Maybe I'm selfish.
Softer, softer. Parting the horse's mane. Tossing the frisbee. Casting the moon out into the night sky.
You can leave now. You can leave now.
Sit on back. And ever softer. Last one. Sit on back. Come right back to the center. Big hug. Nice. Cool. Come on back in. So I'm curious then, did you notice anything that influenced what we just did by having had this earlier conversation? Tell me, here, Sean, let me put, hold on. Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, pretty much everything, you know, because you think you know what to do, but the doing of that thing now is a totally different experience than parting the horse's mane. Now you're splitting the energy. Do you know what I'm saying? I know the name, but I never did it this way before. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Anybody else have a similar experience
Sorry.
like that? No, that's, Rob looks like he's having it. Tell me about that a little bit, Rob.
Just noticing like how I really haven't been going empty, like stepping out, putting too much weight forward. I've been tying a lot of this into stocking training that I had,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of fun outdoor stuff, and I got to lead some kids like last week, and we did like a slow race, but it really is good because if you're gonna make no sound, you totally can't put any weight forward until you've checked everything out underneath your foot. So it's good to like think of that and just slow down and get that step, get that heel touching or that toe touching. So this is good.
Precisely the same principles. You know who else uses that same thing? Is rock climbers. And you're really distinguishing where is my weight, because if I just assume without checking, it's a long way down. Yeah, Claire, hold on. Yes.
Yeah, that was the same for me for the stepping. I had never really given that much thought to it. So that was a good pointer for me. That's,
I have a sort of a dual agenda, and so again, although these webinars are really open to everybody and anybody, I encourage people to come at any point, even if people who've never done Tai Chi Fit before, but have a curiosity about what we're talking about. These webinars are open. Having said that, this webinar clearly sits right at the heart of the 200-hour program, the 200-hour curriculum. Mm-hmm. And so I have sort of a dual agenda in having you begin to understand these principles and the history and the context. One is so that your own personal experience of Tai Chi begins to fill out, right? Not that there was anything wrong with your Tai Chi before, but you see how much it expands, it begins to go deeper, it begins to have more nuance and flavor.
Oh, definitely. Definitely more depth and nuance and flavor. Yeah, I think those are the words for it, for everything. Now that we know these things, when we do the moves, it's a completely different experience.
Completely different experience. And I say this because I think, Claire, you might have been the one in class a week or so ago. I mean, you asked the perfect question. You asked the relevant question or made the relevant comment. It's like, this wouldn't be for me. I'm not all that interested in the martial or that kind of thing. So, but I'm trusting that there's going to be a point to this, because this is the point. But knowing this context creates, a wider experience of it for yourself. Rick, hold on one second. I just got one more aspect to bring out here. The second agenda that I have in having this kind of class and this curriculum is that now a little bit of this will begin to seep into your modeling as Tai Chi Fit instructors.
Yes, of course.
Right? So guess what will happen with your participants as your experience deepens non-verbally, like non-specifically, because I'm going to come back, and I'm going to talk about this on Thursdays, right? It's like, you still don't care. Still don't point out, okay, you should be, 60-40, right? We're still not. And yet, as you experience it more deeply as the leader of the group, the participants will also begin to feel it.
Well, the shoulder thing, like I had a customer in my class that said, I love it and I love everything you do, but she always carries her tension in her shoulders. And I was trying to explain to her, well, yes, you have to, shoulders away from the ears, because I use that a lot, shoulders away from the ears, and elbows heavy. I knew that, but I didn't know the forward. So that's also really good, like to add. So now I get it more, even for myself. So it's easier for me to demonstrate.
By the way, I'm going to give you a little something I didn't make so specific. So when you talk about sinking the shoulders, there's actually a particular spot where that sinking is focused. It's called the shoulder well. And it literally comes up on the nipple line, right up straight to the top of the shoulder right there. And so when you are sinking the shoulder, it's that point that is going down, down, down. Right? So that you don't, like, where on the, like my deltoids, like, inner, outer, whatever. It's the shoulder well right there.
Oh, that's good.
It's the Vulcan neck pinch point.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, I'll remember that one.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for being patient.
Thank you.
What I've noticed is I started out with you 4 years ago, and I used to be the Zumba Tai Chi. Yeah. I mean, I was rapid fire. Let's do 1,000 of these. And I find myself now slower than you are, because I'm enjoying the depth of every movement more.
It's true. It's absolutely true. I used to, watch Rick, do like 5 to every one of the hours that we were doing. And now he's really mellowed out, really slow. And I think also it has that confidence in the movements that you have now, that you don't feel a need to speed up, because that speeding up was a compensation for what you didn't know. And now you know it, and now you are so much more confident in your movements.
Well, when you sink down and you take the time to really sink before you move, that just adds so much depth and flavor to the movement that's what I enjoy. I don't want to leave that point. It's almost you want to linger in that point.
Boy, there's a lot we could talk about. I don't want to get too stuck, because we'll have to come up with a part 4 for this series.
Then you shouldn't have let me talk.
What I want to, what this makes me think of is, as we think about the ancient masters, as we sort of imagine them, Buddha and Lao Tzu and Confucius and Zhang Sanfeng, like, if we could imagine them as real people, whether they were actual historical figures or not, but we could imagine them as such. And they themselves were human beings who were having experiences. Right? This is where it all began. Like having this experience that Rick is describing. So and they didn't have somebody teaching them, oh, this is Tai Chi. They were making it up as they went along. And so they're out somewhere messing around, dancing around, and suddenly slowed everything down and got softer and got sinkier, and all of a sudden had this experience like, this is so yummy. I don't want to move. I want to draw this out longer. If you go back to your basic training manuals, there is a chapter in there, or a short section, on Rudolf Laban, who is famous for Laban movement theory. And he talks about what he called bound flow. Bound flow, which is even a deeper state of flow than fluent flow that you can see that's moving. And so this is, and it's a difficult kind of concept to verbalize, because by its nature, it's invisible, it's very internal. But it's exactly what Rick is describing. This movement when you're sinking down and it gets so slow and it's all drawing in and it's like vibrant with possibility. This is the bound flow, the yin of the yin before yang. Right? This is what that means. Cool. All right. Well, I got to tackle some more. I want to get to at least two more. The next one, number 7, is called Xiangxia, Xiangshui, Xiangxia. Xiang means upper or up here, xia, lower. By the way, Xiangxia is also the phrase that's used for snake creeps down and rooster stands on one leg. Upper and lower. The high move, the low move. Right? Snake creeps down is the xia, and then rooster stands on one leg is the shang. So in this principle, upper and lower, xiang shui, come together. The xiang and shui are almost synonymous, or they're kind of almost a redundancy that means together, and so the word that I use oftentimes to translate it is merging. So upper and lower are merging. So let's do a couple of movements here to experience this. Let's use rooster stands on one leg as a movement here. Back to Molly's question about, is there an order to these, right? And imagine that when you first start Tai Chi, or, remember when you first start Tai Chi, it's like you've got all your parts kind of in different boxes. I left my arms in the living room and my shoulders are in the dining room and my legs are somewhere out in the garage, and I've got to find them all and, get this one working again, and then get this one working, get this one working, get this one work. Then they're working together. Oh, good, look, these are working together, but these and these are not working together. Because it takes a while. Like I can separate and I can get all of this, empty and full. Oh, this is really, oh, look, I'm so boss at this, right? But don't ask me to do the both together. Because that's a stage. Again, to Molly's point about when does this take place? So imagine that you have been led through the series of principles one by one. Your teachers has been introducing you. Finally get to number 7. Upper and lower begin to merge. And now at this point, everything is working like a single unit, right? So rooster stands on one leg. Right, let's start with everything sinking. So I'm full in this foot, empty in this foot. My shoulders sink down. My elbows droop down. My tailbone drops down. The only thing that doesn't drop down, by the way, is the top of your head. Your head still floats up, right? This is the first principle, right? Shu Ling Ding Ting. Got buzzing energy at the top of my head. Everything else is going down, 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 down. And then it all comes up. As one piece. Now, it's not just this hand and this knee, however, which are working as one. It is the energy going down into the belly from up above, from the shang, from the upper, down into the lower, passes through the hips, and down into the foot. So while these two are going up, these two are going down. One unit. Switch. swing. Switch. Good. Upper and lower must work together, must merge together. Now, it's not only about the motion of the body, it's about many other things at the same time. Most importantly, about the chi, about the flow of the energy. So you've got all this energy up here. You can feel it in the palms of your hands, at the top of your head. And you've got energy down here in the bottoms of your feet. In fact, in this principle, we begin for the first time to talk about all this energy that's happening down here in the bottom. Here is where we get a phrase that is one of the most often repeated and powerful phrases, powerful sayings in Tai Chi. It says this: it is rooted in the feet, travels up the legs, is guided by the waist, and at the very end shows up in your hands and fingers. From the feet to the legs, through the waist to the hands and fingers is the pathway. Now, what's really interesting, and then for almost everybody that I know, including, Yang Jun, who is the patriarch of the Yang family, there's this assumption that what it means is the pathway of chi energy. That the chi is rooted in the feet, the chi travels up the legs, it then enters into the upper body through the waist, and then gets out through the hands and fingers. Here's the weird thing. It never actually says that in the Tai Chi classics. It never specifically mentions the word chi or energy or anything else. It's assumed because of the context that that's what it means. But if when I read the classics, the passage that it's in is not necessarily specific about energy at that moment. So what is it? What is that it is rooted in the feet? Something is rooted in the feet, right? More broadly than the energy is the intention. The intention is rooted in the feet. And it's not that it's rooted in the feet, it's bookending. Because you have an intention here at the top of the head and an intention at the bottom of the feet. So you have bookends there. Then the energy is moving up through the legs and into the waist. But we've already been establishing earlier in the series of principles that energy is moving down. We've already said that it's going from the top of the head through the Bai Hui point, that we have to sink it through the shoulders, sink it to the elbow, hollow out the chest, which helps to force the energy down. So we've got energy flowing downward from above and upward from below. And here we find the merging. Upper and lower merge together. Does that make sense? So it's not just that the energy is there, it is the intention which is there. I have an intention to root into the floor, just as I had intention, Ding Jin, I had an intention of energy at the top of the head. Then I have an intention of energy traveling up my legs. In the same way that I had an intention of energy sinking down through my elbows and shoulders. Where do they all meet? Where does all this upper and lower meet? Right here in the waist, in the center. This is where it's all guided. And then, what's the big deal about the hands? A lot of people make a lot of noise about, the hands. But the hands are what in yoga we call the organs of action. It's simply the meeting point. Like we used to say that we talk about organs of action of the hands when we're in downward dog or something like that. But when I'm sitting in lotus, my organs of action is my bum because that's what's touching the floor. And so here I have the hands as it's just the end point of it, right? It's not the most important point. The most important point is here, this meeting place, right? So I drive the intention up and down. So as we go back to rooster together, right? In our some of our Tai Chi Fit exercises, I always sort of sink everything down, right? Because I'm drawing the energy down from above right here into the belly. This goes lower. This drops into a pocket right there. And then from the pocket, everything hinges to come up. And down. Right, everything sinking down from above, traveling up the leg from below. Good. All right, now let's see how far that goes. Open out. Drive it down as you circle down. Rooster, which becomes kick. Driving it down, 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 down. It travels up the leg into the center right here. So the kick comes from the waist, not from the leg. And down, down, down. Beautiful. All right. Before we go, I want to hit at least one more principle. And this is the principle number 8, called Nei Wai Xiang He. So Nei Wai means outer and inner, just like Xiang Xia means upper and lower. Nei Wai means outer or inner and outer. Nei meaning inner and Wai meaning outer. So inner and outer, Xiang He. Again, two words that are very similar, almost like redundant, meaning combining or togethering. And in this translation that I have here, it says inner and outer conform to one another. But the meaning is difficult to sort of wrap your hands around until we read some of the commentary in the Tai Chi classics about this. And it talks in the class, because what you say, what does that mean? Is it like the inside of my body should be like the outside of my body? Am I supposed to have a certain amount of strength or stamina or flex? Like, what does that mean? When we start looking at the Tai Chi classics and the commentary there, this is where it starts to talk about the consciousness level. This is where it starts to talk about whether or not you have a good spirit. Shen, the spirit. So it's a bit of a warning. We get to this point, we get to principle number 8. And it says, by this time, you're starting to get good. You're starting to get a little dangerous. Remember, I was talking before we took a break about can you pass the test of power? Right? You're starting to get a little dangerous. And so your Tai Chi, your technique is getting to be powerful and effective and dangerous, right? But if that outside has been developed to this extent, the principle says your inside must also be developed. And clearly, according to the classics, they're talking about your level of consciousness and your spiritual side, your spiritual development. So come on back in for a second and have a seat. Because this one I can't really demonstrate. I can't really give you a Tai Chi move and say, okay, this one clearly shows your spiritual nature. How we know or how we develop our spiritual side in the tradition of Qianzai, the 1,000-year temple. Again, remember, taking sort of the best practices of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, drawing from all this, is something that is inside all three of those traditions called Gong and De. Gong and De. Gong meaning merit, acts of good accomplishment, of like you did something, your actions were of a high level, right? It is the same word that we use for the word for gong fu. Gong fu, high level merit attained through deliberate action, through development of skill and perseverance, right? Gong. And de, meaning virtue. Meaning virtue. It is the word that appears in the book, the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching, that's the de, meaning virtue. And so we do acts. It says, outside of your Tai Chi practice, I want you to do things. I want you to start practicing being a good person. Practice being a person of benevolence, of authenticity, and compassion. And don't just talk about it. Walk, 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 walk. Go out and do stuff that will demonstrate that to anybody who happens to look for it. And in doing those actions, you will begin to accumulate the virtue. So I have and da is sort of an interesting concept. So I have a good definition here. This is from, I'll have to give you the website, but it is an analysis of the Analects of Confucius. Because in Confucianism, we have the same kind of concept here. So it is a very complex concept, initially related to the notion of charisma, derived from power and gift giving. So if you're a rich person, if you're the prince, the jiaozi, right? If you're the boss, the leader, but you're generous, you give gifts, you throw parties, you elevate people to higher positions, right? You have a certain kind of charisma, you have a certain kind of virtue that you are said to have. Oh, in other words, he's a nice guy, right? And from that original notion of charisma, it developed into an ethical term denoting self-possession and an orientation towards moral action. So in everything that you do, I'm going to get political here. So in the last week, there has been the huge October surprise, as it were, about the tape that emerged of Donald Trump talking about sexual assault and how his misogyny towards women, right? And his response to that was to say, "Hey, it's just locker room talk." And I even heard some commentators saying, "Oh my goodness, if he knew his microphone was on, I'm sure he wouldn't have been talking like this." But the Chanzai, the Tai Chi way, says this is precisely the point, that the actions of the virtuous person are such that it doesn't matter whether anybody is watching you or not. If you're in the locker room where it's just the guys, or you're in the middle of a high-level ceremony, that your actions are consistent, that you are the same indoors as you are outdoors, that your speech towards one person is the same as your speech towards all people, that how you treat people who have no power over you is the same way you would treat people who have more power over you, right? The way you act to the waiter in the restaurant tells you everything about a person's character. This is the point. This is virtue. And so you accumulate virtue, you train yourself, right? Using that Buddhist concept of you've got to be an active meditator, got to train yourself, got to be in action about it, in these ways. So here are the Confucian list of gongs, which are the same list of gongs or meritorious actions that we find in Buddhism and in Taoism, and of course then in Tai Chi. Righteousness, which means morally correct action choices. It doesn't mean, being self-righteous or being religious or, better, holier than thou. It means that in your choices of your actions, you always consider the moral point of view. Loyalty, trustworthiness, respectfulness, and this is something that is understood, like how you act when you're when it's midnight and your teacher is droning on and on and on, but you're still paying attention. This is respectfulness. This is what they mean. It's sort of like, and trust me, I've been there. Oh my God, I've been there. Been like at the end of a 3-day weekend of intensive, 9-hour trainings, and the seminar leader is giving one last long-winded lecture, and you're like, I've got to pay attention. Right? That's respectfulness. Filiality, which is a concept that we don't often think of in Western culture, about being loyal, respectful, and supportive of your parents. And in a broader sense, your teachers, because again, 师徒如父子, your teacher to the student is like a parent to a child. So there is this loyalty and support that the students give to the teacher, right? Filiality. In fact, to your whole family. And this is the point, about what's so amazing about what goes on in the Tai Chi Fit community, is that filiality is not only how you respect the teacher, but how you respect the other members of your family, your brothers and sisters, your children, your nephews and nieces, how you support them, how you give them respect, how you give them, support and a boost. And finally, valor. V-A-L-O-R, valor, bravery. In the 17th century, when we wanted to know, how am I going to practice valor? You say, go to battle, be a martial artist, square off, fight it out. It's scary, scary stuff. And so you take a few punches and you get back in the ring again, right? That's less relevant today. We use it as a metaphor as well as a physical thing, but we use it more as a metaphor because there are other things which are just as scary. Standing up for what's right. Not just letting things slide by. It's scary in an age when somebody can jump on Facebook and plaster, nasty things about you that the whole world then sees. Right? And you say, well, the things I need to say need to be said anyway. And you get courageous and you practice that valor. And so here's the thing about all of these gongs. It's not like, okay, I've just given you the gung ticket. I've given you the righteousness ticket. Now go out and be righteous. Or I've given you the courage ticket. Good, go out and be courageous. You have to train for that. So it is the responsibility of the teacher, the parent, if you will, to create the environment in which you can take your baby steps. And the baby steps become toddler steps, and the toddler steps become, teenage steps, and then the teenage steps become adult steps. Right? That is the Chensai legacy. That is what was different about this method than the separate Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist methods, is that we took it back down to a way that it could start and grow and train in a safer environment. Something else that was unique about the Chen Wanting, who was the first person to start Tai Chi, is that not only did he bring back all of these separate teachings into this new distilled philosophy, he also was the first one to introduce pushing hands. Tai Chi Fit Connect. Before that, the way that people practiced was full contact, full speed. One of my teachers, George Shu, used to ask him, "How did you learn all your martial arts? How did you learn be so good at kung fu?" And he took off his shirt one day, and his whole body has got knife scars all over it. And he said, "You learn because if you don't learn, you get killed." And this was the way that prior to Chen Wanting, everybody practiced. Everybody learned it. He brought it back to something that said, let's start with a basic sensitivity. Let's start with something that is something everybody can survive, take the baby steps with. This was really unique. It hadn't been done before. This was the wisdom of those ancient masters that came down to us. All right. And this is why, to me, like, I have such an admiration and a love for just about every tradition that I come across, right? They're traditions because they have so much value. But what I love about Tai Chi, what keeps coming back to me about Tai Chi, is the genius, the brilliance of bringing all this stuff together in a way that anybody can access it. Anybody can learn to be a virtuous person, the kind of person that could change the planet through the training of Tai Chi. All right. So we didn't cover everything, but we got almost all of it out there. Do you guys have a good sense of the origins of Tai Chi and where it comes from? We didn't talk very much about the Taoists. I wanted to read some more passages from the Tao Te Ching. I guess we'll have to wait. We'll have to do a part 3 at some point in time for this one. But I wanted to go through these principles with you. So the last 2 principles, I'll give them to you really quick, because we talked about the last one, the number 10 already. In the midst of movement, you can find your tranquility. That is number 10. And number 9 is the one that we practice every single day. It is the principle of flow. Xiangliang Buduan. Xiangliang Buduan. Continuous without a break. Continuous without a break, without a separation, without a chunk. It's just all flowing together. That's number 9. That one I think you guys are really, really good at. More so than I think many, many Tai Chi schools. So I started, kind of at the bottom end of the list of principles because I thought that was the most important one. That was so often under-taught in a way in Tai Chi. But you guys are really good at it.